Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show.
The Mandalorian is the Star Wars spin-off show about Mandy the Lion and his suit of impenetrable armour and his funny weird little pal who just eats everything. In Chapter 11, the Hieress, the team of folk finally managed to limp their way to this planet they've been trying to arrive to, and everything's still falling apart on the spaceship, but Mandy manages to pull off a spectacular landing that works pretty much right until the last minute, although nobody actually seems that bothered. And he pays a local guy to fix the ship up, and then after dropping Lizard Lady off with her pal, he goes off to find a bar where he can ask about other Mandalorians. And sure enough, Squidward there is like, yeah, I can totally introduce you to somebody who'll sort you out, and halfway there, they try and pull a fast one and lock him in the hold with some kind of monster that's chomped Baby Yoda. But miraculously and fortuitously, a whole bunch of Mandalorians appear and wipe out all the Squiddies, and rescue Bubba Yods. Then they all whip off their helmets and he's like, oh, hold on now, you're not real Mandalorians. And they're like, yeah, we are. What are you talking about? Oh wait, you're one of those crazy zealots who never takes their helmet off. Oh wow, okay. And then Starbuck points out that she's actually pretty much Mandalorian royalty and is next in line for the throne once they take back the planet Mandalore. But he isn't too happy about all this stuff, so he just jets away. But when they get back to town, turns out Squidward's brothers are kind of annoyed about all their pals being murdered, so they look for a bit of payback. So of course the Mandos all come in and absolutely murder everyone. And him and Starbuck decide to have a chat down the pub, which seems nicely empty now because everybody's dead. And she says that she'll point him towards the Jedi, but only if he helps her take out an Imperial ship. And so they do that, and it's ridiculously easy because, stormtroopers are rubbish, and because the Mandalorians have magical armour that can't be shot. So it starts looking a bit bad for the Imperials, and the bad guy off Lost calls up Gus, who says, yeah, you're going to have to scuttle the ship, mate, this isn't great. So he does, he shoots the pilots, and just as they're trying to take her down, Starbuck bursts in and asks him about the Darksaber, and he's like, nah, not telling you, and chomps some kind of electro-death tooth. Anyway, job's a good one, they got the ship, everything's sorted out, and Starbuck tells Mandy where he can take Bubba Yods to find a Jedi. So he nips by the Lizard daycare and picks him up just before jetting off in his kind of fixed ship. So what did I think? Well, this was back to the shorter episodes of the show, the closer to half an hour long rather than 45 minutes. But it was kind of an okay episode, and there were a few things I liked in it. First off, there were some familiar faces. It was good to see Titus Welliver. You probably know him as the smoke monster bad guy from Lost, or the main detective on that show, Bosch, or also, I think he was an IRA guy in the third season of Sons of Anarchy. And then, Giancarlo Esposito pops back up again as Moff Gideon, and hopefully they'll do a bit more with him later in the season. But also it was nice to see Katie Sackhoff, who was Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica, and she popped up here as Bo-Katan, who's this kind of Mandalorian princess or something. And that was kind of cool because I've read that she actually did this character already in one of the animated shows. She did the voice for it. So it's kind of nice for them to get her back to actually play the live action version. It's a nice bit of continuity. So I'm not really that fussed about it, and I've never watched the cartoon, but yeah. And it was also great to finally have somebody make sense of the whole this is the way and the helmets on or off business, because that was kind of bugging me because it's so been flip-flapped back and forth between different ones on different shows and films. That it makes more sense if it turns out there's an ancient religion and he's actually part of a kind of a zealot group, because he was brought up in a weird cult, and didn't really actually speak to many other people. So it would make sense that he would think this is it and everything else is wrong. But I have to be honest, even at half an hour, this episode bored me. Partly because, again, we're showing that Mandy is so naive he just walks into ridiculous situations and gets, screwed over again and again and again. And even when he does, it's just a mishmash of him being either super cool and ultra capable when the script needs him to be, and being a bit of a klutz and a useless idiot when it doesn't. And which version just depends on what the script demands in any particular scene. I brought that up a few times last season, and it's unfortunate that it's still the case. But it also came a cropper during various shootouts this week, and against the stormtroopers and the fishermen, but also, call me crazy, but I assumed that his helmet was watertight to his suit, because also the other Mandalorians don't seem to have that issue when they dive into the water. Also, speaking of the thing with the fishermen on the boat, now, yeah, straight up those guys were planning to murder him and nick his armour, so I don't feel bad that they killed the crew, or at least, killed the ones who were the main ones doing it, but they basically killed the entire crew and blew up the ship. What if there was little Roger the cabin boy who actually had nothing to do with any of it? Anyway, also they go back to the harbour and they massacre everybody else there who is rightly annoyed about the fact that they killed all those crew. I mean, kill everybody seems to be the way. And it doesn't really make it that great for, people who are actually supposed to be the heroes of this show. And also, just other little problems, like, for example, at the end of it, they make the whole joke that the guy's pirated up his ship with, like, random bits of webbing and nets and stuff like that, and he has no idea. But 10 minutes earlier in the episode, they were literally sat on top of the same ship, using it to look at, like, the Imperial cruiser they were trying to take over. So he must know what was happening to his ship. So that just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Also, just as a minor point, right, when they decide to lift off and the ship tilts back the way, nobody seems to be bothered by it. But then when they decide to tilt the ship forward, everyone starts falling forward. That just doesn't make any sense. And, the whole bit where he runs up and charges through all this gunfire just to throw a couple of things. Right, this scene is ridiculous because there's nothing to stop him just walking up and doing it anyway because his armour is impervious to gunfire. But also, there's nothing to stop him throwing those grenades from the other side of the hall. I'm sure he could manage an overhand throw far easier than this tiny little underhand flounce that he does, that after like running and falling over. And again, it completely makes a joke of the fact that we're supposed to take any of these fights seriously because the stormtroopers might as well be firing like, puffs of air at them. But anyway, it was only a wee episode, and yeah, it only really needed a wee review. So till next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions. And a special thanks to everybody listening, and especially my patrons, and most especially to Michelle Forbes and Judith Coloma, my top tier patrons. Thank you, everybody. Everybody stay safe. Cheerio.